The Marketing Futurist Podcast, Episode 16. Mind-blowing inspiration to create and innovate. This is your Futurist advantage.
Welcome to the Marketing Futurist Podcast, where your hosts, Mary Catherine Johnson and Kelly Garrett, chat with innovators who are keeping the human in marketing while driving the future of tech to give all of us a futurist advantage.
Hey there, welcome back, Marketing Futurists. Mary Catherine Johnson here, you know Kelly Garrett, and we get to introduce you to a gentleman we recently met that might bring a bit of a fresh face. Yes.
Hey, thank you.
Fresh voice to the whole marketing scene. Let me introduce you to Jacob Warwick. Hey there, Jacob. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, so I don't know if when people watch their podcast, they watch it in the afternoon, in the evening. Just realize some of us had to get up early to do this.
Well, we certainly appreciate that.
Definitely, and I'm up at that time as well. Had to try and make everything look halfway decent in order to get on a video. Oh my goodness. Well, start us out, Jacob, with just kind of introducing yourself and your company and what you're currently doing. Let's just start there.
Sure, man. It's a laundry list when you're in marketing, that's for sure. I think a lot of marketers wear a lot of hats. See, my background has been about 10 years in digital marketing, primarily in Silicon Valley. I guess I kind of have a background in journalism and reporting, which tied into content marketing as it grew. I've done anything from integrated campaigns like email campaigns and getting CRMs integrated with marketing campaigns. A lot of time in social media because if you remember about 8 years ago, any business would say, oh, the kid does social media. So that was their business answer. So I always had to find ways to keep my job so I can be on Twitter all day, right? So I ended up learning a lot about social media marketing and how that can grow and how social media is filled with content, why you need to create good content that resonates with your audience. I guess you can throw any buzzword in there. But I've worked in kind of the gamut of integrated marketing for 10 years with high growth startups. I guess the biggest company I've worked with is Xerox as their director of marketing for a period, as well as companies like MyFitnessPal through acquisition by Under Armour and some smaller tech startups like ClearVoice. I've worked with a lot of MarTech companies as well. And when you work with MarTech, you end up marketing to marketers about marketing. So you need to learn a lot about marketing, which you learn by doing all the marketing. And then you have to talk about it and sell it to marketers. So, you kind of get the full gamut of what's going on in the industry when you're trying to figure out what everyone's looking for, content-wise.
Right. Yeah, I can relate to that a bit.
Yeah. And I guess my business is primarily focused on consulting, and I do really well in B2B and the tech world, particularly with products that are more expensive than your typical impulse buy. So, for example, if I were working with a team like Buffer, that's not a good fit for me because it's a $10 purchase. It's more of, you kind of buy it and sometimes you forget it and you don't use it. Or, you keep using it every day. It's the greatest thing you've had. My concentration is primarily on software in the enterprise realm. So something like Salesforce or something that can cost your company $30,000 to $50,000 a year. And you really need to understand the value it provides at that point. So some startups do end up working with enterprise software more along the lines of I'm in the mid to upper class of business sizes. So 200 plus, growing to 1,000 plus and things like that.
Got it. Wow. Okay. So that sounds like, you've gone through a lot of different facets from the small little kid handling the social media up to enterprise level. And, I love that, talking to marketers and selling to marketers and doing marketing about marketing. It's like a total vicious cycle that basically feeds on itself.
Yeah, don't let it get to your head. It'll confuse you.
I was going to say, it like feeds on itself. It's like eating its own foot. I'm talking about marketing and I'm doing, anyway, we're going to leave that, that visual alone. But in that, you've talked about a lot of different events and aspects of that marketing career that you've taken. What obstacles did you encounter in that whole trajectory of the last 10 years?
I think obstacles in terms of my career, particularly in Silicon Valley and high growth startups, typically expectations are up here, and I don't want to say the talent level, but the maturity level of the marketing team is usually a little bit lower than the expectations. And that disconnect causes a lot of friction.
Just a second. You mean like expectations in terms of results and what you can do?
Correct.
Okay.
So for example, obviously everyone says, we need to point to ROI. We need to point to the purpose of why we're doing marketing. Great. That's absolutely true. You obviously want to you put $1 in, you want $1.50 back, things like that. In Silicon Valley, it doesn't always work like that. It should work like that. But in a venture-based company, they'll have, we just need users at any cost so that we can get our next round of funding. So what I've seen in that disconnect and that friction between marketing maturity and expectations, a lot of stuff can get thrown out of proportion. So for example, you find people that, let's talk about growth hacking. Let's just grab 20,000 users in India, even though we have a United States-based product. So to the VCs, it looks like the company is doing great, but in reality, it's not doing too well because the expectations that marketers would lose their job if they didn't get the numbers somewhere. So there's a big disconnect in that. And then you get things like inflated numbers that really aren't that important. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that I've seen, as well as marketers are usually the last to hire and first to fire. So there's a really high turnover rate because you have to prove your worth right away. So I've always been focused on, all right, how can I, and it gets kind of into your analytics mind, right? You're like, how can I prove value on this campaign? What's the purpose? Like, how do I show my boss that I'm worth being here? Which is kind of always a little bit of an anxiety, particularly for younger marketers in Silicon Valley, from what I've seen.
Right.
And I think that challenge is escalated with the increase in salaries that are expected in the Valley as well. So for example, you pull in a marketing manager's making 85,000 a year to start, and they might only have a year or two of experience. And that's just what it costs to be in San Francisco. So from a business owner perspective, you're hiring marketers that may not know what they're doing at a pretty elevated rate. And you're kind of like, all right, guys, let's go. It's like my burn rate is here and we're not getting results because it takes time. And a lot of marketing strategies take, years or, 5 years to get brand activation going and things that we forget about nowadays, like the importance of building a brand. And a startup isn't going to come and be Uber right away, or, it takes some time to build that. And
so how can you show, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt, continue.
No, go ahead.
But so how do you show that value right away in a short amount of time?
So the cop-out answer for most marketers is it depends. Because it's going to depend on Well, let me see. It really depends. Again, I try to manage expectations from the front before you even start the campaign. So it doesn't matter if you're doing an email marketing campaign or, say, a social marketing campaign. You always want to point back to a purpose that the business has. So, for example, we want to reach, and I'm going to say millennial audience because it's so popular for someone to say millennial audience, even though that's not actually a segment of people. It's just, what an executive sometimes says.
Yeah.
So we want to reach a millennial audience. So we've noticed that on their channels, they're on Snapchat, Facebook, and Instagram mostly. And our product has a visual component so we can be there. Like that's a purpose to start experimenting with those communities. So you start setting goals, like you have the big goal of reaching that audience, but you set goals along the way to measure, to make sure you're getting there. So when it comes to social media, a lot of that has to do with engagement metrics. It's more along the lines of who you're connecting with and how that's driving value to your business rather than how many people you connect with. So I think, you can argue the value of a like and the shares and paid advertising on that end. But at the end of the day, it's really not worth it unless it's driving business for you. So again, it's going to come down to, your purpose for that campaign and the goals, and then setting benchmarkers along the way to make sure you're achieving those. When you do that, you also can kind of see like, oh, we're not hitting our goals. We can cut and run early before we invest another 10 or 15, or in Silicon Valley numbers, 250,000 into this campaign before we realize it's failing us.
It's not going to work. Yeah.
And so do you think, like you said about managing expectations, that in the early stages when you're trying to build a brand and you're trying to just get going on social media or digital marketing, it's more about explaining to your clients that we're not necessarily going to be tracking dollar figures. It's not necessarily about revenue at this point. For the start, we're concerned about numbers and engagement and that sort of thing. Is that?
Well, I don't think there's no catch-all answer for that.
Yeah.
Like some clients have a high level of marketing maturity in which you're supplementing their efforts and driving revenue right off the bat. It really depends on the level of marketing maturity that you're working with.
Sure.
So you'd be surprised that even larger organizations, businesses, I've worked with clients that have $20 to $30 million in annual recurring revenue, and they only have one person on their marketing team. Now, I don't care how good you are as a marketer, one person is going to have a hard time marketing a company of that size. So they're juggling. They're doing the content, they're managing the blog, they're working with freelancers and agencies, and they're reporting back to the executive staff. They're working with the sales team. It's a lot of hats to juggle. So when you come into an organization like that has the resources, you can quickly build a package that works for them. Whereas a smaller team, you kind of want to manage expectations slowly. Like, all right, let's take baby steps at this, right? And make sure we're testing our processes and building something efficiently before we work on scaling. And typically, in my experience, clients really like to know that you don't want to spend all their money right away. You want to spend their money when it works.
Right.
So you're going to have to invest a bit in understanding your strategy and what kind of tactics you should use to execute that strategy. But you don't need to go full, feeding someone out of the fire hose, just like a ton of content or a ton of processes before you know the value that it's going to provide for you and whether or not you can even execute that.
Right.
So I think one of the best examples I could give for that is, I don't know how many marketers have been in this situation where your boss comes to you and says, we need to be blogging. Like that's it. That's the only advice you get. This is our direction. We're going to be blogging. And so you put the work together, you write a great blog article. You really want to do, it's a new campaign. You give it your best effort. You write your blog content, you interview a few people, you do all the right channels, you're making relationships, you get the article published, and then you reach out to all of those people and you say, hey, look, we published this article, you're in it. We also got featured in Forbes. This was great. We sent it through our distribution channels, right? They're going into communities that are relevant to that article. They're talking to people that they did all of the right steps. It's a really high quality piece. And then their boss goes, wow, this did really great. Now do 5 a week. And you're like, do you understand what goes behind all of that?
Right. Yes.
So, that's, you have to understand the entire process holistically before you try to replicate it several times. Because you're going to start running into headaches where, as a marketer who is always kind of facing the guillotine, right? Because if you're not proving results, you're going to lose your job. I've seen that a lot of people are willing to just say, yeah, all right, I'll do 5 a week, and they're going to be terrible. Mm-hmm. And they're going to get less value, and that's going to create and amplify, I guess you could say, noise. That's a popular term we like to use in marketing. The noise that's out there, you're not going to be creating anything of value, especially anything that's better than your competition. And it's really kind of a moot point just so you can get a paycheck at that point.
Well, and so if you could take that I agree 100%. So if you can take that, and a lot of the people in our audience are building their own marketing business and trying to communicate these kinds of concepts to their clients, not just their boss. Obviously their client is their boss in that respect, but that person that they are trying to sell this campaign to or sell this concept to. So what would you advise to be able to set those expectations, to be able to clearly and without getting into all the weeds, because that boss that comes to you and says, write a blog post, it does not care about you going through and taking and either writing a whole report or taking a half an hour of his time explaining everything that goes into that blog post. So
Right.
how can they, in a very efficient but yet clear manner, set those expectations and help the client understand to be able to manage those expectations? So, because I had this situation happen recently
Sure.
where a
Yeah, and
client was like
I've been through it as
oblivious.
well. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's a bit different for me because I spend more time scoping my clients before working with them. I've never really been one to just take work because I need it. And I think that's something that marketers need to take into consideration. Obviously, getting your agency off the ground is a challenge. You want to just take this work, take this client. You'll notice that a lot of good agencies, once they start growing, start firing their old clients because you get into a position where they're just handing you all the work you don't want to do. Right.
We don't know anything about that, right, Kelly?
Yeah, right.
Oh gosh.
Nah, we don't know anything about that.
But to answer your question more clearly, and again, this is my perspective here. I take longer to scope and spend a lot of time in my scope and discovery process is often a lot of client education. So not only is it seeing if you're a good fit and you have the skills to match, I'm sure you do. If you're opening a marketing agency, you're probably already a step above marketing maturity than the clients you're working with. But you really take time to educate and understand who you should be talking to and how to sell your product. So
Definitely.
Again, it's a slow process for me. Sometimes I'll scope a client out for a year before I do a big retainer push or things like that. And in the meantime, it's not that I'm spending a year on a proposal. It's nothing like that. It's just weighing out where that company is, how I can best help them in that situation. Because to be honest, I don't really want to write blog posts, at least not that often.
Definitely.
But understanding and opening your client's eyes to what you can do is going to help them just start trusting you. So you feed them education, you tell them how it's going to relate to their business. You're always giving that value and building that trust. Now, I realize that not a lot of agencies are going to have that luxury of being able to educate right off the bat. Sometimes they're just like, I want a proposal in 5 minutes. And you're like, okay, if you need the work, you'll do it. If you don't need the work, pass.
Right.
You're going to learn who you want to work with pretty quickly and how to grow your business from there. Just have the expectations that it's okay to say no on certain deals if the education doesn't match or you're not a great fit. Or if they have, they want you to do something that's way out of your realm, then maybe it's not worth the opportunity. I would say that in many cases, if somebody offers you a great opportunity and you don't know how to do it, sometimes you just take it and figure it out. But maybe that's another discussion.
And that can get you in big trouble sometimes too.
So what I really like about everything that you're saying, and this kind of segues into discussion about kind of the future of marketing as well. But what you're saying is that pretty much everything is about kind of a custom approach or personalizing what you're doing with the companies based on where they're at with their marketing. You could even take that a step further and say personalize things based on what their customers are doing and where their customers are at. And that's a really common theme that we have seen with people that we've been talking to when it comes to the future of marketing. And so I feel like basically what you're saying is you need to have your marketing chops. You can't just go and, take a strategy that people are proclaiming online will make you millions of dollars in 90 days. You have to know how to do it at the end of the day so that you can mold what you're doing to each client.
Yeah, but I think it's okay to, maybe not for an agency, but if you're a small business owner, I think it's okay to not know what you're doing. I think in a lot of ways, small businesses have an advantage in their marketing in that, particularly if you're a two-man shop, right? If you're the head of your company, you're the only person that has that 360-degree view of everything that's going on. You know your customer better than anyone else. And if you bring some marketer in to help you with that, it's going to take a while for them to get up to speed and understand even 90 degrees of what you know about your business. So, I think there's an advantage in even having less marketing knowledge in that regard. You just need to think about, and that's where a lot of clever ideas come out, right? And they think, oh, what's the best way for me to, say, a photographer, what's the best way to market my photography business? Well, I take pictures all the time. Some advice I gave a photographer was, when you're in town and you see a couple or whatever, and you offer to take a picture of them with a Polaroid, and that's your business card. So it's like a little thing that's like, oh, it's a tangible piece of marketing that it's not a business card, not a real business card in the traditional sense. It's not paying Facebook advertising so that people can go, oh, look, another photographer. It's like, this person came to a special moment where I was with my fiance or whatever, and I got a tangible picture that I'm going to put on my fridge because nobody has real pictures anymore. It's things like small businesses knowing that, and for me, one of the most effective campaigns that I've done for my business is to direct mail people in the marketing industry. Not send them marketing book, not send them a marketing book with me that I signed, not sending them, the other day I sent Ann Hanley socks with her dog on it. And little things like, because we were thinking about her. I was having a conversation with a couple other so-called marketing influencers, and we're like, Ann Hanley came up, and I was like, oh, have you seen her dog? It's so cute. And like, we talked about it, and I went on Amazon, I spent $7, and I sent her some lucky socks. And little things like just to encourage relationships. And that's not me publishing an article in Forbes that could cost thousands of dollars in time to make sure, and I'm not saying you should pay to put articles in publications. I'm saying in your time to create piece, work at the edge quality, or you could hop on Amazon and get something that somebody likes. We send Christmas cards out. We're not afraid to share who we are. My fiance and I take cute pictures and send them to people that we work with and wish them happy holidays or Christmas or whatever. And those little kind of, I wouldn't say they're out of the box, but they're so simple.
Well, and you're talking about
simple
human
ways
relations.
to remind people. It's like, in my world, especially in consulting, that's how the world is driven. Mm-hmm. So it's not, I'm talking again, this is B2B. This isn't necessarily driving a big consumer product. So again, I'm not sure on your audience side what they prefer, but I think you can take that personalized step in your marketing as well. And the future is going more segmented, more targeted. You don't really have a choice because the big brands are already killing it, right? They can personalize, like Starbucks can personalize your experience in the mobile app and change the music that's going on in the store. And like, you can't compete with that. And it's not your fault that you can't compete with that, but the consumer is now educated to a point where I expect this great experience from whoever I do business with. And whether you're capable of providing that or not, I don't care. So from a B2B standpoint, if you're capable of providing a next level, like I'm giving value, I'm giving that relationship, I'm not asking for too much ever. I'm genuinely interested in helping you. That's going to set you above all of the 1,000 inbound messages in LinkedIn where they ask you to connect and never respond to you again. You have to go that extra step to make a difference, especially in B2B.
Yeah. And I like that because I think as marketers, it's very easy to say, well, what is the next biggest tool or gadget that's going to help us stand out in the crowd and stop the scroll on Facebook? Yeah, exactly. And
it's in your head.
It's not a tool because everybody else is going to be using that tool. So it's about the really simple thing, get creative.
Yeah. What I really like that, obviously algorithms and robots and tools, they make our lives easier. But again, if everybody's following the same algorithm, everybody's going to have the same type of content and they're going to live in the same information bubble. So in order to stand out, you're going to have to do something different. You're going to have to interview real people. You're going to have to see what their thoughts are. And when it comes to marketing tools, like the greatest tool is the one you actually use. I've been with companies that'll spend thousands on software solutions and they go, yeah, we don't actually use that because, like Asana is a great product. It's a great product for people that use it. I've seen teams that spend money on Asana and no one on the team wants to use it because they're so familiar with just sending tasks back and forth in Slack. So it's just a waste of money. And I wouldn't say anything negative about their platform. They're trying, they're there for them, but the team's not using it. Things like I really recommend a tool called Sprout Social. Like it's very easy to use, and it's borderline expensive, but small and mid-sized businesses can usually still afford it if there's a need for it. But I would never recommend it to somebody who doesn't want to put the work in.
Right.
It's really good for community managers and social media managers. And if your team only has a content manager, it might not be a good idea for them because they're already managing writers, they're managing graphics, they're managing all these other things. They won't have enough time to use that software effectively. So there might be another solution for them.
The tool is not the answer to your problem. The tool should only support what you're already doing.
You should already know the process and the end goal that you want. So for example, I'm working with a PR agency right now, and we're pushing about 50 articles a month to 35 different writers and 12 publications. And I'm responsible for all of this in a very limited amount of time because they're a client of mine. So I can't handle all of that in Google Docs. Right? I need a system to be able to see that. So right now, and because I've worked with ClearVoice, I have a pretty good partnership with them, and they let me use their software. So I'm like, well, I might as well use it and check out how it works and build the processes together. But I already knew that I have this need, and previously we had editorial guidelines living in several different documents in Google Docs. We had emails back and forth from different team members going to editors. And so if you can imagine everything being siloed off. So writers were sending content back in notepads, in Word documents, in Google Docs, in pages. And so I get this and all right, I need to pull this out, put it all into a universal format so the editors can expect, what they're getting, and pull images out and find a good way to, so it's like a lot of, there's silos and there's organization.
Right.
Whereas rather than using those 5 things, I put everything into ClearVoice and I can send my guidelines to each writer specifically, and it appears in an editorial calendar for me. And I just go, oh, this is a day late. I need to talk to them. Or, I can leave editorial notes directly in the platform, and they don't have an option to send it in Word or Pages or any other thing. It has to go through the system. Oh, and instead of invoicing, I can pay them directly through it. So I eliminated like 3 or 4 pieces of my process. And every piece that I eliminate is 10 to 15 minutes of headache. And when you multiply that by 50 articles, 10 to 15 minutes, even if it was only 10 minutes an article, you're saving weeks worth of time in productivity and efficiency. That's when a tool becomes useful.
Right.
For example, if you're on Facebook all the time and you just have to keep logging onto Facebook to publish your business posts or, any social network, and you get distracted by the other stuff going on and you start, scrolling or whatever, Buffer is a great solution. Just throw it all into Buffer and hang out. Again, I caution that with a caveat because I don't think you should have robotic posting of all of your own self-serving interests, but
right.
you get the point.
Yeah, but you can also use that to retweet, repost, share posts. You can do all of that in Buffer. It doesn't have to just be your own content, sharing your own stuff.
And I will also leave the note that I don't use social media automation because I don't care if I go 3 or 4 days without posting. I know that sounds like a travesty. I don't care if I have 10,000 followers or 2 followers. I'm using it to build relationships, and the people that I am connected with on Twitter or I am connected with on LinkedIn they're there for a purpose. LinkedIn's a little messier than it should be, but it is where it is.
Yeah, it's tough. So I have a feeling I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What really drives you nuts about this industry?
What really drives me nuts. I need to take a second here. There's so many times that I'm reading a post on, from a so-called social media marketer or content marketing influencer or guru or somebody that takes pictures of themselves and quotes their own self on it and then shares it. I get it if you're actually famous. I get it. And you're like, I'm Joe Montana, and here's Joe Montana's quote. But Joe Montana doesn't share that.
No.
Right.
And, it's nothing against anyone personal because I do understand that you need to play the game to a degree in order to get influence. But someone like on LinkedIn specifically, there's like a 1-line sentence and then a space and then an emoji and then a line. And it's like, you need to do this to grow your business and funnels and like hashtag. And like, I'm like, oh my Lord, like, does this help anybody? Or they'll say, and I know how to play the game because I've experimented with it. You say something provocative and then you provide no value. But people comment on it because you said something provocative enough. Like they'll say something like, women don't belong in tech. And people will be like, that's outrageous. And then they'll like start ranting, but then they'll be like, is what one boss said to me once. And then they'll like play you and then send emoji. What do you think about this? Obviously it's going to rile people up, right? And with some like ludicrous statement. And then they're like, they get 100,000 followers from it. And all of a sudden they're an expert on marketing. Or what I'll see is someone will start an agency and you look through their experience and they've never had a marketing job in their life. And you're like, okay. Or, you know, what really gets me, and this is more of an ego problem, but when somebody like will say something very negatively towards me, and I shouldn't take it personally. I understand it's the internet, but someone says something negative towards me, or they'll decline like a proposal that I have, like, your marketing isn't really the experience we're looking for because this is what I know about marketing. And then I go in their experience and they've never had a marketing job. Or it'll be, you know, I'm 22 years old and I have a CMO job. I'm like, no, you don't. That's not a real job for you. And this is like I've battled that because I've had seemingly elevated titles for my experience. I didn't go to college. So I started marketing right at 17. Like that was, I didn't even realize it was marketing at the time, but I was doing marketing jobs. I was doing video content. I was doing interviews. I was writing email. I was managing a 50,000 person email list at 17 years old because for whatever reason, my boss trusted me with that. I've been doing it since I was 17, and I've seen like a lot of BS out there. And I would say that, I mean, 90% of influencers and 90% of marketing advice to me is BS because it doesn't apply directly. Like it doesn't mean it's not good for someone else. So there's that caveat, but it's just, you have to be careful what you read out there and really put a lot of your head into it on like, wow, this is great that, you know, Snapchat's really good at this audience. Xerox doesn't need to be using Snapchat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like just because it's popular and in general, overgeneralizations, I think in life in general is silly. Like overgeneralizing an entire group or all B2B people, all B2C people, all millennials, no. Everything is specific to your business. So any writing that is not considering those different angles or providing real actionable advice kind of hurts my feelings.
Yeah. And I would prefer someone who's cut their teeth at actually doing the work and figuring it out than 5 MBAs or, you know, master's degrees in marketing. If that exists. I don't even know.
There's a lot of value in going to school. I would never knock it by any means. I think the connections that you can have and what you learn about marketing and human development or psychology and the fundamentals, those things, you know, are universal. Like you do need to know that.
And you can learn that in many different places. It doesn't have to be in a college education in a college setting.
And again, it's going to come down. You can have 20 years of a marketing experience and not know what you're doing. There's a lot of people that are in marketing roles that have great titles that make $300,000 a year, like don't know the difference between analytics and email campaigns.
Right.
They just, you know, they're in old school. It's just interesting. Like so I guess like putting too much thought into like a title or someone's experience isn't necessarily an indicator or a precursor that they're going to be great for your business. I think a lot of the best workers that I've hired have been, maybe because my budget is cheaper, but have been friends of mine that I knew were very intelligent. I just gave them a problem. Wanted to see how they solved it. If I knew the answer to it, then I would have done it myself. But I trusted other people to, you know, give them guidelines. And, you know, sometimes you can find ways to get your marketing done in a very cost-effective way without having to invest in that really expensive marketer.
Yeah,
I think we're off topic now. Sorry.
No, I get it. And what I hear you saying is just what you were talking about with consumers when they walk in and they have that expectation of that personalized experience. Be as personalized, be as authentic, be at all those buzzwords, be as present with the problem in front of you as you can, rather than looking to generalizations of this is what I should do because their right. audience is millennial, or this is what I should do because their audience is e-commerce, brick and mortar. You know, be as present and working out the problems and the issues of whatever's in front of you, the client, the customer, the relationship you're trying to build. be present, build that on a one-on-one personalized basis.
You need to understand the resources that you have as well, particularly from an agency side. If you can utilize, if you can use the resources that the client already has, that's going to make them happy. You don't come in and say, oh, you're using Marketo, I only use HubSpot, so I'm going to ask you to remove and do a new marketing automation. There are a lot of folks, especially C-level folks, that come in to fix a company, and they'll just completely reworkshop to be something that they're familiar with rather than adapting to the situation they're coming into. So I wouldn't recommend, like, to a client that has freelance writers, I wouldn't recommend hiring more freelance writers. Like, let's see what your freelance writers can do before we clean up shop. Right. You don't need to come in, maybe the problem with your writers is that they don't have leadership direction. Maybe you need a content manager instead, and this goes in marketing, because so much of marketing is both creative and analytical, as well as managerial and task-based, right? So you have the strategic and tactical thinkers. Tactical thinkers will be really good at just getting stuff done and doing it well. Strategic thinkers are going to be really good at understanding all the tactical pieces that need to be put into place to reach a goal. You have those two types of people. And you have the creative people that, again, they're going to be really good at creating things that are new and original. And then you have the analytical people that are going to be really good at managing and understanding how that fits in the greater piece of the puzzle. So what happens is you'll hire somebody as a director of marketing, but they're actually a creative director. They don't know the analytical side of things and don't know how to point back to the business goals. But you only have the budget for one person. You went the creative route and your analytical side is struggling. Or you go the analytical route and your creative is terrible. Right? So you have like really highly technical things that only engineers can understand and nobody else. So you're not telling a story to the whole side. So you have to manage the skill sets and resources that you have. If your team is very creative, the only thing they're lacking could be direction. Give them a leadership role. Give someone a leadership role to manage that has the capabilities in their career to do so.
I have to say there's one, especially I know Kelly and I have been working with and talked to a lot of people who are coming up, whether it's in their own agency, whether it's in their own small business, and they're looking to, say, bots or chat bots or AI or different kinds of futurist ideas in marketing to move their business forward. And I love what you just said with the two sides. And there's a really good book, I think it's called Rocket Fuel. And it talks about how you need both sides of that. Even if you're a CEO, if you're a leader, you need that operations person. If you're an operations person, you need that leader. So one can't really exist without the other. You can't just be a leader and not worry about the operations. You have to find that person and be very strategic in finding. It doesn't have to be a business partner, but it has to be that role is being filled, because a company needs both of those things. It can't exist with just one.
Yeah, and I would say it's the entrepreneurial conundrum. As a small business owner myself, when you have to do everything, like I'm the CFO, CEO, whatever. Like it's great to have those resources. I think a lot of those gaps, if you're a small business owner listening and it's one-man shop or only a couple of you and some contractors, I think a lot of those roles can be filled by mentors to help balance you out. One of the biggest challenges I have is that I'm not particularly analytical or creative. Every time I take the test, I can be 55%, 45%. And when I do the extrovert introvert, as extroverted as I sound, it's exhausting. So I'll be 55 extrovert, 45 introvert. So I guess, I don't know if that means I'm bipolar. Am I marketing bipolar?
There's a new term for you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, let's write the book on marketing bipolarity.
Yeah, right? There you go. So take us into the future, though, Jacob. Let's go into the future. So what tool or tip do you feel the audience needs, or that you can give our audience to really give them that futurist advantage?
So yeah, because the audience is going to be diverse, and I'm repeating something that I've heard a lot of other marketers say, so I'm really not trying to copy them, but at the end of the day, everything's going to boil down to empathy and putting yourself in the customer's shoes and actually doing it, not what you think their shoes are like, but actually talking to them, working with them, building relationships with your customers. As you grow in that knowledge and have that kind of drive to understand them, you're going to understand what they need more. For example, and I was talking with ClearVoice about this because ClearVoice and I have been on retainer in the past. We're not currently, just a caveat. But I'm working through their system, and I'm thinking, hey guys, it would be really great if you sent me a guide that I can send my freelance writers so I don't need to teach them how to use your software. So ClearVoice's side can go, all right, if I'm in the user's shoes, what could I do to make their lives easier? What does their typical day look like? So I sent them pictures of my tactical workflow. I'm like, this is what I do. This is where my pain points are. And I color coded it. I'm like, this is smooth. This is smooth. This is smooth. I have friction here. This is nearly impossible for me. It's a real big headache. Then they see that and they go, okay, how can we alleviate this stress along the way for our consumers or our customers? So for me, I'm managing 35 writers. I don't have time to teach 35 writers how to use their software. They should, one, the software should be good enough to know that already. Mm-hmm. But two, if they can provide any training or materials that I can give my freelancers, I'm going to be much happier with ClearVoice and more likely to stay with them as a partner. So that can go with any business, right? So my dad is a wedding disc jockey. He provides a wedding checklist, just like as part of the meeting. Like, these are all the things you need to make sure you're doing for your wedding. And obviously those exist on Pinterest and those, they've been around forever, but he was doing this in the early 90s. Checklists, like a bride-to-be goes, oh, I almost forgot about my flowers. Like, God forbid a bride forgets about her flowers. I don't think that's possible. Little things like, because it was a local-based business, very small, in Northern California. He knew all the vendors in the area. He knew who to recommend, what the costs were, and created a guide that says, look, if this is your budget, this is who you go with. And it saved so much time for them. Yeah. And little things like that, like having a wedding checklist of your competitors not competitors, but I guess other vendors, doesn't necessarily help your business. It's not directly relating to the sale. You already got the sale. But they're more likely to say, wow, they really helped me through the process and I will recommend them in the future. And that can be carried on from small businesses to large enterprise businesses. Beyond the sending a company gift basket and a bottle of wine because they spent $50,000 on your account. Like, what if I instead invested all that into creating a piece of content that helped everyone on their team use it? Or did a training for them or a workshop, little things. Right. And you only understand that by putting yourself in their shoes. What are they going through right now and how can I help them?
And that ties back into what you talked about too. It ties back to the whole setting expectations and communicating clearly and being personalized and all of that. It comes full circle. So, wow. Fantastic. We work in software, we work in tech tools, we work in all these different things. And I know and I'm sure Kelly does too, knowing the two of us and the way we work with tech, we can get down into those weeds really easily and just get totally consumed with like the new checkbox tool in chatbots and, figuring out where to use that and how to use it and not come up for air and go, this is not my client's pain. This is not where my clients are having issues. This is a fun, cool thing for me to play with, but it's not directly related to what my client needs right now. So being able to balance those two things is what I hear you saying.
Yeah, and chatbots are an interesting topic. I haven't done a lot of research in here, but from my angle, it can obviously make your customer service line or whatever it is you're doing much more efficient. For me, when I'm talking to a chatbot, like most of the time I just want to talk to a real person, which can be frustrating. So if I can make my chatbot answer any questions as frictionless as possible, that would be my goal. You have to go like, all right, if they're coming to me for XYZ reason, they're probably pissed off and want to talk to a real person. Or if they're coming to me for these, I can send them down a path that's going to keep our customer service team free to answer the people that are actually in need. Right? So I think there's a big valuable point there. If it's responsive and like chatbots have to be immediately responsive, right? Right. Like there's those fake ones that you see on agency sites. Like, hey, I'm live. I'm like, it's 3:00 in the morning. You're not
live.
Yeah.
No.
Like,
Let's not try and fool people. Yeah.
I mean, it's almost as bad as like going onto a website and getting a full page takeover. Like, sign up for my book, and you go, no, I don't want to. And it's like, wait, you don't want to learn more about marketing?
Yeah.
Like,
no.
Is this really your angle right now? Like, I don't want to learn more. That's why I don't want your ebook.
Yeah, right. Negative, no. Negative doesn't always work.
Right.
Wow. All right, Jacob, this time has totally flown by. I thank you so much for sharing this with us. Got to say, Jacob lives in my neck of the woods, Northern California. So we're going to have to definitely meet for coffee sometime soon, since we're not very far from each other, as soon as the snow melts and you can come on down the hill.
We got about 1.5 inches last night, so it's really not that bad.
Good.
I should show you what my front yard looks like.
Yeah.
It can be up to about 20 inches at the moment.
Oh my.
I know. I saw a video of you. You didn't show the video. You just said that I made it up my driveway with no issues. That was like, wow, that's amazing.
She didn't tell you about the snowshoes.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the car, so she couldn't put snowshoes on the car. So thank you so much. I appreciate it. We'll have all the contact information where our audience can get in touch with you.
Sure.
But I really appreciate you sharing your value with us and really bringing us back to, personalized care, empathy, all the things that really get lost in this robotic future that looms before us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mary. It was great to meet you, Kelly. Happy to be part of the show.
Thanks, Jacob. We'll talk to you later.
Get your Futurist advantage by joining our Facebook group at marketingfuturist.co/group and tune in for our next journey into the future of marketing.